Thanks, Simon. All right, so here we are, November 16th, first snowfall of the year. Let's go ahead and get started with the Conservation Commission. Do we have anybody on for public comment?
Reed is just in the process of joining. I'm not quite sure what's going on, but if she does have something to say, maybe we can just
give her a second.
Later.
Sure.
Yeah, there she is. Morning, Reed.
Morning.
Did you have any?
Hi, Reed.
Morning.
Do you have any public comments to share today?
No. Sorry.
All right, no worries. Thanks. All right. So next up, we have the minutes from last meeting, November 2nd. Thank you, Simon. Get to my notes here. So I just had one comment right at the beginning. I think under number 4, second and third sentence, Eric asked about the wetland delineation and what the arrows mean and the wetland area mean.
Yeah. Okay, I'll delete that.
Thank you. Anyone else on the minutes from last time?
I unmute, it would be easier to hear me. Yeah, there was one more awkward wording. I think it had what and when next to each other down in the trapping policy section. Let's see. I should have kept my document up so I can remember where it is. Yeah, look for. There you go. Maybe it meant when trapping is taking place. Yep.
I just had one thing too about talking about the buffer up above. Of course, I lost the place here too. If you go down a little bit. Yeah, Laura said the boulder should be paired with the natural vegetation so that people do not use the buffer side for amenity. I'm not sure what the word is I was trying to use, but maybe just use the buffer side.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that one, Laura, you were talking about people making it part of a garden or like a feature. I think a feature was kind of what you were saying last meeting.
Yeah, no, I see that happening here and there, and I know we've seen that in the past. So yeah, maybe even for a later meeting, signage would be good too.
All right, thanks everyone. Anything else on the meeting summary from November 2nd?
I'll move approval of the minutes as amended.
Thank you, Reed.
Second.
I think I heard Gary come in first that time.
It's a race.
Any other discussion? All right, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And any abstentions?
And mute didn't work, but I said aye, Eric.
Okay. Thanks, Reed. All right, there you go, Simon.
Great, thank you.
Okay, cruising right along. Let's head into Berlin City Kia. What's happening with this project?
So this is a discretionary permit request for an extension to the Kia sales and service building. I think it's predominantly extensions to facilitate the service element of it, which is located in the Industrial Zoning District West. Just let me bring up the report. So you're probably all familiar with where this is. So off Marshall Avenue, sort of weird shaped plot near a stream and with watershed protection buffers. So if I this is sort of orientated, so north is facing to the right, and so Marshall Avenue is here, where the green line is, and the buildings sort of here, and then we have two extensions here and here. I think the service reception extension is for people to drive their cars and sort of get them taken off over to the service bay extension here, and the service bay extension I think gives them an extra 5 or 6 bays to work on people's cars. It is a discretionary permit. You didn't actually see this before. They were allowed to go straight to discretionary permit without any pre-application request because it's a relatively minor addition. Probably one of the more sort of interesting things from the conservation point of view is that they are proposing to restore some areas of wetland buffer that's currently in sort of used as gravel parking area and a parking lot. So the wetland buffer sort of goes around like this. And then this area here, this sort of almost like a crescent moon shaped area is currently used as gravel parking and for a dumpster store. So part of this involves removing all that and restoring it to natural vegetation. There also, I think there's a light fixture down there that's also being relocated. So just in all that annotation.
Thank you,
There
Simon.
we go.
But I just have a couple quick questions relative to that. One thing is that, so once that's restored, it's going to be left totally alone, not mowed or not impacted, minimally impacted, I guess.
Yeah, so as part of this is going to be restored, and then we talk about that later on, so you can see them sort of parking there in the dumpster store. We talk about that in relation to the watershed protection buffer. In fact, they need to be marked on the ground in final plans. So suggested using boulders in this location, particularly as there's obviously pressure to creep into that watershed protection buffer. So it does suggest that we need something relatively permanent in there. And a sort of thought that occurred to me over the weekend is that maybe this might be a good candidate for having a sign, given that there are people who work closely to that. And there's a group of people who, should we say, are used to moving heavy things. So I think some sort of indication to them as to why the boulders are there would be probably helpful.
I guess the other half of my question was, do we know what the flow direction is off of that parking lot? Like, is it right into the buffer or is it away, or how is that managed?
So
This might be a good time to,
yeah,
I should have
ask
welcomed in
Doug.
Doug as well. Doug, I assume you're one of the engineers on the project?
I am. Dan Heil is the primary engineer here at Trudell for this, but he had a conflict this morning, so I'm sitting in for him, but I'm familiar with the site So to answer the question on grading, currently and what's proposed, stormwater will run off to generally to the north and west a little bit. So basically pitched away from the building. So then it's treated in vegetated areas adjacent to the paving, and then eventually ends up in the wetland area. So there's no structures, there's no concentrated flow, there's no ditches or swales. It's just sheet flow currently and proposed off the impervious surfaces. And certainly, with the revegetation, that will improve stormwater runoff and quality in that respect.
Thanks, Doug.
You're welcome.
Gary, did that answer your question?
Yeah, I think the key is to be really, like Simon pointed out, to be really clear that they're not to do anything in that buffer once it's restored.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, Simon, I think you made a good observation. This would be a good time or project in which to use signage with boulders to make it clear, especially to having that space. I guess one of the questions I had, and Doug, I don't know if you can answer this or not, is it looks like the business will be losing fair, I don't know how, it's hard to tell how much parking, but I assume they have a plan for that, or they don't need that extra parking that they'll be losing?
I think they'll gain some space, or they will gain some space inside, with, as Simon said, with the additional
Right, okay.
service bays and such, where cars are now parked kind of willy-nilly all over the place back there. I think this will give them a little more structure, and there'll be more cars inside on a day like this, drying off, dripping off, that sort of thing.
Yep. So, okay. So I just want to make sure that they're not going to end up jamming cars back off the, wherever they can into the wetland buffer if not all of it is bouldered or whatever.
Well, we'll probably get to that, but we're fine with boulders. I think that makes sense, and maybe one sign saying this is a wetland area, no encroachment beyond the boulders, because employees there come and go. Some may understand it, others may not. But a visual sign, I don't think we need multiple signs, but I think I'd be fine with one that explains the purpose of the boulders, but still allows. I'm not exactly sure where they're pushing snow and such, but a continuous fence is problematic sometimes for snow removal, but boulders they can negotiate around if need be. So we're fine with the proposed recommendations.
Great, thank you. Simon, did you have more to share, Simon?
No, I wanted to point out that, I guess we should probably say that a lot of the parcel is mapped for strategic wildlife habitat area, but the development's exempt as the footprint is less than 100% of the building. And in any case, no work's actually taking place within that mapped area. Those are the only two main items that came up.
So I had one last comment now that you guys have brought up snow. Is there a snow removal plan that hopefully excludes moving into wetland buffers and such? Do you know, Doug?
I'd have to look at. Go ahead, Simon.
So there is an area marked snow storage here, which appears to be outside the wetland buffer. I don't know if it's in very small writing.
Yes.
Yeah. There. That looks,
Just wondering if that shows up on another plan, Simon, that there's a blow up of this area on the second sheet.
Not that I saw, but I wasn't looking for it. Oh no, there would be, because there is just a larger.
So the text there is larger and shows the snow storage area, right? So I think with the boulders and such, it will force them to push the snow to the west, which is good because Obviously, there's a nice level area that's out of the wetland buffers and such, so that would be where they want to do
It's a
that.
good, I'm glad you asked about that, Gary, because, you know, snow storage can also be disruptive in terms of getting the snow into that area if it's beyond the boulders sometimes, or if it's into the buffer.
Just for clarity too, the, excuse me, the plan we're looking at has a line with squares. That's a temporary silt fence. That's not anything physical. It looks more like a fence. It is a fence, but it's a silt fence. So there's nothing physically there to prevent them from plowing snow off the edge of the pavement.
All right. Any other questions on this project, the findings and recommendations? Do we want to go through? I think we covered, maybe not line by line, but I think we covered all of the points in the findings. And then there's just the 3 recommendations, which I think we talked about too. The erosion prevention sediment control plan, they'll be doing, I assume they'll be doing that, correct, Doug?
Yes, we have silt fence and such shown, but we might just beef that up a little bit on the plan.
Yep.
So on that second recommendation, it says all watershed protection buffers must be clearly demarcated. Do we mean all associated with this improvement, or do we mean all like behind the place near that snow disposal area, or what do we mean with that?
So I think it's probably a question of proportionality. A lot of this buffer, from looking at it, is actually sort of demarcated by the trees. The tree line seems to follow the buffer. On the rest of the site, it's this part where the part near the service bay, where there's sort of almost like a gap, which might be one of the reasons why they've pushed into it. So we could clarify at the northern end of the site. It's not the most precise way of doing it.
Or we could say all buffer adjacent to development or to disturbance from the project. Could you bring the plan back up one more time, Simon, just so that you can see the different areas where it touches the buffer?
Maybe another question related to this is how are they doing now with not impacting the buffer? I mean, if there are issues, maybe this is a good time to do some minor signage in several areas. I don't know.
You mean across
So-
the whole site, Gary?
Well, I'm just, maybe not. I don't know. It's just an idea I was thinking of, because often we find that over time people creep into buffers, and it'd be nice to use this opportunity to remind them of that they're not supposed to be in there.
So we've not got any reports that they are going into the buffer.
Yeah, that doesn't mean
other than this end.
Yeah, I mean,
I get-
it maybe a quick look or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm just looking on Google Earth, and so this is also a new car dealership. So they're not going to be in the new cars are all out in front, and they're not going to be driving those off of the parking lot asphalt. But looking at the lot, in particular the lot to the east, there is a mowed area just off the north side of that parking lot. I can't tell if that's inside that mowed area is inside the wetland buffer or not.
Looks like there's a little bit of space there. But yeah, it really looks like it's the north end. So that's a different, that's a leased space.
That's right.
Oh, it is.
Yeah,
So
Oh,
that's
okay.
it's not part of this parcel. Yeah.
Okay.
So if we just look at this parcel, yeah, basically it's the north end where the watershed buffer is near the disturbance from this project.
There's a few site photos, Simon, that are part of the application that show pretty
Yeah.
well that the area to the west is fairly heavily wooded right up to where they're parking now. I'm
Probably
not
share
seeing
those.
any active encroachment at all. As someone said, that the trees are prohibitive from getting way back into the woods to the west toward the end of the site photos.
So not really a conservation commission consideration, but I think the enforcement or violation issues with this site might be more related to signage than anything else. So yeah, this is by the service bay. So you can see the dumpster off in the background there.
Yep.
Looking the other way.
Yeah, it does look like the
That was
the woods is right there.
that was the shot I was looking at, was the previous one. That
This
one,
one?
yeah. Yes. So we're looking straight north at this point.
Yeah, and you can see where the gravel is there, that those dumpsters are being brought toward the observer in this photo.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for pulling that up, Simon. We can go back to the recommendations if we're ready to keep chugging through those.
So one is good, two is good. Were we gonna add signage to number two, or were you, oh, you were writing a fourth recommendation, okay.
Yeah.
So we're also, are we comfortable with the language in recommendation number two? Simon, can you zoom, can you blow that up a little bit?
I think we were talking about, this suggests all wetland buffers. It doesn't, it doesn't discern between the new area versus any previous wetland buffer.
Mhm.
Am I correct?
And
Yeah.
the existing
The-
tree line covers the west side. It seems to be the current
Right.
state.
Yeah, I think the west side is okay in terms of being marked, unless they get out there with chainsaws or something and start cutting trees down, but the way it's written, you know, all buffers should be marked on the plans and on the ground to prevent disturbance. So you know, I'm comfortable with the trees on the west side serving that role. And then then we have for the northern end of the site using boulders to mark the watershed. So I'm good with the way that's proposed. Anyone else
Want me
have?
to say?
So I was a little distracted by something else. I'm not sure what I'm looking at here. These aren't relative to this project,
Yeah,
correct?
Simon, can you switch back to this project?
Oh,
All right. Okay. Sorry. It's I see Zoom isn't as clever as I thought it was. Okay.
There
There
we
we
go.
go.
okay.
Doug woke up in another project.
Yeah. All right, so Doug, does that make sense to you, the way number two is written? I don't think we changed it at all, did we?
No, that wording was fine. Yep.
Okay, and then number three, the area within the wetland buffer is marked on the site plan. Area to be restored, existing gravel to be removed, okay, shall be restored with vegetation, okay. do we have, I can't remember, do we have a list of vegetation or is that just we just have a list for like street trees that are,
We just
approved.
have a list for tree. I think we have a
Okay.
list of trees that are not allowed. And then we refer to the Vermont Tree Guide, the trees that
Okay.
are allowed.
I think our proposal would be to just excavate what gravel is there and topsoil it and throw grass seed down and then put the boulders down and let nature kind of do its thing. If it's to be undisturbed, let the natural vegetation establish itself there. If they don't mow it, it won't take long for nature to take that over.
Yeah.
And I just had a quick comment. I think we have a sentence or two from other projects describing what's allowed in buffers, basically nothing. But I mean, I think we want to maybe throw that in there that because I think it says something to the effect of no mowing, no, basically can't do anything in there. I hate to be a pain on this, but we find over time people start, you know, maybe mowing around it a little because they think it looks better or something.
Mhm.
Hold on a minute.
I mean, we spend all this time demarcating them, but yet then don't say what can be done in them or what can't be done, maybe.
I suppose you could tie it to the state wetland rules too. To just say, uses shall be in accordance with the state wetland regulations. If you didn't want to come up with your own.
Yeah, we do have some,
Okay.
some verbiage on that. I don't know how easy it is to find.
I think what the language that Simon just added to number 2 is, I think that's good. I guess my only concern is with what you were suggesting, Doug. I'm just throwing down grass seed is if it's a lawn or looks like a lawn, then landscapers might be tempted to mow it because that's what they feel like they should be doing. And that also just would, I don't know what's in there, that area for native vegetation or invasive vegetation, but if there is buckthorn or whatever else in there that's invasive, then that will just move right in and take over. And I'd prefer to not create that opportunity for it. So I guess I would like to see something more than just grass seed put down, whether it's dogwood or stems of dogwood or something else that at least gives some native vegetation, shrubs and trees, maybe a chance to get a head start on the buckthorn and whatever else. I guess that would be my preference.
I tend to agree, Eric. Not necessarily, it doesn't necessarily have to be trees, but even native shrubs that can help accelerate the reforestation of that spot will help prevent invasives from taking over.
Should we stick number 4 in with number 2 so that the informational sign is also along those boulders?
Or maybe make it number 3 so it's right after. No, is it valuable to have it stick out separate?
That looks good.
Okay. Anything that 3 and 4 look good to me. Any other questions or comments?
I guess I always appreciate a line. You can disagree with me, of course, if you'd like, about something like the only disturbance would be removal of invasive plants.
So that would go in number
so-
2.
Yeah, I
Would that-
guess right after other disturbance.
It would be, to prevent mowing and other disturbance.
And allowable
Period.
disturbance, and allowable disturbance would be removal of invasive plants.
So I think we do allow removal of invasive plants in the bylaw. We also allow, as you probably know, the removal of hazard trees. And I think they are allowed to cross these buffers for things like utilities and road crossings, not that they necessarily have a word, and trails and things like that. So there are a few things that are allowed in there. So
I think consistency is important, and with the, whatever we think we should be doing over time, if we think we should be referring to just allowing the bylaw to speak to allowed disturbance.
Yeah, I think that's fine, actually, since there are so many things in the bylaw. We don't want to start putting them all in the recommendations.
yeah,
Okay, thanks, Laura. Anything else on these recommendations? If not, may I have a motion to approve as presented on the screen?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Gary.
Second, Laura.
Thank you, Laura. Any discussion on the motion? All right, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? And any abstentions? All right, motion carries. Thank you, Doug. Thanks for your time.
You're welcome. Yeah, thanks for your time, folks.
Have a good day.
You too.
All right. That was fairly straightforward, like those. Annual reports. So Simon, can you pull this up on the screen? So
Yeah.
this is one that's dragged on for way too long. I'll take some of the blame for that. I didn't do my part, and I think Simon gave up on me and just wrote the parts that I was supposed to write. I think I took a look through this last night, and yeah, so we have a couple highlighted sections here to clarify, and then otherwise I think we're good to wrap this thing up, right, Simon? Any
Yeah.
outstanding pieces?
No, I think if we could just go through it, there's just a couple of queries and that I've highlighted in yellow, and also just to
I don't understand fiscal year, so that's my excuse.
yeah. So I'm assuming that's
Perhaps I should say
June.
2021
yeah,
and the next one should say 2022.
yeah.
It confuses me that 2022 fiscal year ends in June.
Yeah,
Doesn't make
It's
any
not.
sense to me, but
it's not
Anyway.
natural.
the whole, I know that it's been something that Chapin was talking about and the planning commission has been struggling with, the whole cycle of writing up our annual report around the July to June, and then it's presented in December. Is that right? December, January. So it's just confusing, but that's not a conversation for today.
Nor is it anything we're going to be able to fix.
Yeah.
That's a
Hey,
statewide problem.
all we need to do is become rebels,
Yeah.
Eric, and start reporting year by year, not fiscal year by fiscal year, and everybody else will come along.
All right, so we have the years fixed now. Anything else in these two sections?
So I was just going to delete this area. I think it's just a note from Laura. I think if it reads fine without that to me.
Yeah, given the audience here,
Yeah.
Laura, I would suggest we not do the Latin name.
No problem.
Sorry, Latin speakers.
There was one thing related to Carl's little right up there. At one time we were talking about trying to get a photograph. Is that still appropriate, or I don't know, I can't remember.
Was, well, so we only have, there's two things here, two pieces here. We have the one page hard copy, the one page copy that will go into the actual hard copy of the report, and then we have the digital version that can be longer.
Okay.
So I'm not quite sure where our one page ends, if it's just what's on the first page here, or we need to do some pruning. But as far as getting a picture of Gary, Simon, I think, didn't we get a picture of Gary? Or didn't the town get a picture of Gary?
Carl.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Carl. Jeez. It's the beginning of a very long day for me. Carl, didn't we get a picture of Carl at that gathering thing this early this fall or end of the summer at the gazebo?
Yeah, Eric Wells or town staff
Yeah, I
should
can
probably have a
ask.
picture.
I can ask Eric.
I know they got at least a group photo that maybe, geez, Carl could be photoshopped out of.
I know that Chapin has lots of pictures for the riparian volunteer work. So if we want one, I can easily get one of those for us. SWHA doesn't really warrant an image.
Yeah, so photo for Carl, not for the SWHA or the EAB, maybe one for Alan Brook work, and then maybe one for the boardwalk. So we've got one page in the actual printed annual report, and then we can do, well, 2 pages. We can do as much as we like for the annual report for our web page. So I think back in the summer, we talked about the important things to include in the annual report, which were Carl's service, the work on significant wildlife habitat area, EAB, the Alan Brook project, and the Alan Brook boardwalk, and then just a bit about reviewing the discretionary permits. Now, obviously, as written, that doesn't fit. We also had on the B list this mud pond conservation area management plan. So without agonizing about it too much, do we want to maybe take some of this out and put it wholesale, maybe take a topic out and put it wholesale on the B list here?
You know, you could probably, if you wanted to mention Emerald Ash Borer, just say it was confirmed in Williston. The Catamount Community Forest will have in their report about the specimens that were treated. So you could probably just take out the rest of that, I would think.
I wonder if we could, depending on what we have for space after that,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
move. I wonder if we could just, include like the first sentence as Laura suggested, and then in the summer 22 period, see the digital version of the report or something like that for more information, or add that sentence at the bottom of the full report maybe.
I can do that. Yep.
And then SWHA can be cut in half for the print version. So where it says the last 4 lines where it says these discussions have led, from there on can be taken out of the print version and included in the online version. So basically down through habitat characteristics. I think that's the Reader's Digest version. And that helps us a little bit.
Yeah, I can cut down this replacement boardwalk, I think. There's probably a lot
I
of
think
verbiage in
the
there.
fact that the project was done using Black Locust is important. So if you can keep
Yeah.
that in there, that was definitely a consideration.
Yeah,
And perhaps a precedent for other work in order to avoid pressure treated.
yeah. So I'll cut that at least in half. And then probably end up 2 lines there. So that probably all fits, I would think. And then I'll rearrange the remainder so it makes sense when you're reading the 2 pages, if that makes sense. So we don't just end up with duplicated content.
Sounds
So
good.
2 pictures, one of the boardwalk and one of Carl.
I think at a minimum,
Yeah.
Yeah. if there's room for a third, let me know and I'll get one from the volunteer work,
Pretty
because I
sure
know
there
there's some
won't be.
good action photos, but there's not gonna be much room.
Yeah.
I guess we could put it in the online version, we could put
Yeah.
include a photo of that. Shall I get
Yeah.
one for that purpose?
I think that would be good because I
Yeah.
think we will have a little bit of space for the online version.
Will do.
So that went quicker than I thought. Does anyone have any other changes?
Thanks for
they
pushing
wanna
us
make?
through, Simon.
Yeah, thanks for that. I guess the only other, not a change, but, and this may just be something that we talked about and I've forgotten, but, and I thought, oh, there it is right there. Never mind. I was wondering about discretionary permits and pre-apps, but I see it. So I'm good.
Yeah, we'll keep that in. Just
Yep.
It's nice to show. Those do take quite a lot of commission's time.
Yep.
So it's good to show that. And
Even
then
if
I
it's just
think-
one sentence.
right. Yeah. And like I was thinking to when Chapin was mentioning about how you're telling people at March town meeting what you did in June of the sort of almost 2 years ago now. But it is helpful for people looking back and sort of studying the history of Williston, I think, to understand what was happening at that time. Okay.
All right. Looks good. Thank you, Simon.
Right.
All right, so next, staff update. What's going on with Catamount Community Forest license?
Yeah, so just let me bring it up. So I think back in September, I think we did speak to this because the license needs to be renewed. It expires next October. And both ourselves and the Outdoor Family Centre are keen to get it renewed as soon as we can. So I think we went to the Catamount Community Forest meeting and also yourselves to get comments back. I think your comments were sort of just as a reminder, simplified slightly with just some minor drafting changes, recommendation to simplify the event notification procedure, perhaps a more pragmatic approach to monitoring usage than making everyone checking at the hub, looking into trying to leave the parking lot open at all times to avoid people parking on Governor Chipman Road, making sure we have emergency access available, which has been resolved separate to this through basically just pretending to chain the gate rather than actually chaining it. And then I think Ethan Tapper had some language on the forest management aspects about the necessary disruption to trails, both during and after, and also the fact that the area of forest he's going to be working in is not going to look particularly pretty once he's done. So Yes, I can just run you through quickly what the changes are, the sort of the combined changes that staff have made, incorporating in staff comments, your comments, and the Catamount Community Forest comments. That's helpful. We've got a little bit of extra time, so we can spend a bit more time on this.
Sure.
So I think one of the things we did was just to reference their discretionary permit, which they achieved this calendar year, which sort of retrospectively authorizes them as a outdoor recreational centre to cover their day-to-day programming, and also their parking lot and them occasionally using a food truck and things like that. We have here, we're going to propose to the select board that they be given at least 10 years this time, rather than the 5 years. Everyone was pretty happy with how things went. So that was something that staff and the Catamount Community Forest Committee recommended was that if they're not intending to renew, can they please give us a year's notice so we can find someone else? There was something that came up following discussions with staff and the Outdoor Family Centre. We do want to try and monitor trail usage by pedestrians. So we are going to continue to encourage people to check into the hub. 2 reasons: to try and make sure we, as best we can, understand how many people are using the forest, but also to get them to sign the Outdoor Family Centre's waiver. And then in this section, there was also providing the Outdoor Family Centre with some clarity about what types of events and uses are and aren't allowed, more closely tying it back to that discretionary permit as an outdoor family centre, and so that anything that's too explicitly commercial is not something that we be prepared to authorise without a change to the forest management plan, which also accords with the conservation easement. So I think we also have tried to simplify the events procedure to provide more flexibility for them and us. I think their concern was they were being asked to provide us with their list of events in December for the next year, at which point they had no idea what their events were going to be. So this is sort of to try and make it so they've got more time to figure that out, but we've still got time to review it and approve it as staff. And then secondly, to provide more flexibility over things like when, they might not know exactly when an event is, but broadly when it will be, to agree that and also agree additions.
Those look really common sense.
Yeah, I think it would help, and I think it's one of those things where you draft an agreement to try and control how I think people are going to do things.
But I like that clause in there that says if the town does not respond to the event schedule, then it's assumed to be approved. That way they're not waiting and bugging the town to respond.
Yeah, and I don't think we've ever not approved their schedule, and I think anything that they propose that we might have an issue with or want to control more tightly is probably going to be a temporary event, which they need to have a permit for anyway. So this is to try and clarify what they need a temporary event permit for, which basically includes any use not authorised by their discretionary permit or where it would exceed the vehicle capacity of the parking lot. So if they're talking about parking on Governor Chittenden Road, which is not something we'd be enthusiastic about, or using the oval, or something that's likely to result in more than 150 people attending the event. Anything that's basically overnight or involves overnight camping, and then a request to the fire department, anything that involves a big tent. And then something also from the fire department about making sure they follow their guidance on burn permits and campfires. Some information there about trail closure, just to clarify who does and doesn't have the power to close the trails. Previously, it was just the town theoretically who could close the trails. And then there's sort of a list of reasons when we can do it, which is generally ecological sort of timber or trail abuse. We have inserted a provision that the licensee can close the trails where it's to do with their interest, which is managing those trails. And the reason for that is that, you know, we're trusting them to manage these trails on a day-to-day basis
Yeah.
for us.
They probably know better than we do when to close them.
Yeah. So we thought it should be appropriate for them to have that power, but they do need to tell us when they're doing it.
Yeah, that makes sense. That second bullet, the denigration of the trails resulting use during spring thaw, should that be resulting from use during the spring thaw?
Probably, but I've sent this out to them now. They're going to come back with their comments. I'm already on like draft number 5. So I'm just going to wait until they come back before I make any other changes.
Got it.
And this has not been attorney reviewed. So I think
Okay.
once it goes to the select board, and we're broadly like in agreement with the Outdoor Family Centre, the attorneys can tell us
They
how
can-
everything's going to be a disaster.
Yeah, okay. And then they'll work on it and then no one will understand what it says. Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they can turn it from something that's readable to
Yeah.
unreadable.
And charge us $5,000.
So these are the town's rights. So here we just have the information that this is basically Ethan gave me his comments, which relate purely to this paragraph. And I've just included them verbatim. So really it's broadly about making them understand that there will be disturbance. It's not going to be a picture perfect forest once we've finished doing that work. And then just some information about repairing the trails to their current condition rather than beyond the condition.
Looks good to me.
Okay. Just let's not go into all that long-winded stuff about how we can hold events at the
I was gonna say, did that say the town can hold events? That was just making
so
sure that,
this is to make sure that we can hold events there. And as I understand the history to this, when this was originally drafted, there's a lot of concern that the town was going to want to hold huge numbers of events there, and that we wanted to make sure that we had the right to do so. In the event, I don't think the town itself has held any events in there in the last 5 years. I know that
Pandemic has helped with that.
yeah, and we've got a lot of other places to hold events too. And then I think secondly, you know, those sort of events that are non-outdoor family centre ones, like, you know, Terry's bird walks or Ethan's forest walks or Laura's invasive days, they've just agreed them with the outdoor family centre. It's just not been a problem.
yeah, but if we needed to, those could be allowed by the
Yeah.
town.
So we have about a page worth of text that sets
Okay,
out
just
we
want to
are
make sure
allowed
I
to do that.
wasn't crazy when I read the town can hold events.
Yeah. And then lastly, the parking lot. So there's some clarity in there about who's responsible for what, and it's us on the sort of general maintenance and making sure it's level and graded. And then the outdoor family centre on ploughing, because they are there. And also we don't have the ability to prioritise their parking lot being ploughed. So in regards to keeping the parking lot open, I think we did discuss that as staff, and we don't have the ability to take on sort of day-to-day maintenance of that when the outdoor family centre is shut, given DPW's current staffing levels. We've sort of agreed in there with the outdoor family centre that we're going to try and keep it open whenever possible, and not close it unless we need to. So they are allowed to close it where it would be dangerous or unsafe, or where they think that you know, the spring thaw has been such that, you know, use of those trails would sort of deteriorate the entire network. You know, everything is a problem. But if they do that, they need to notify us, the town, that have done so we're aware of it and we can check that it's not being closed inappropriately. And then we've also, you know, if at a later date we do have a policy to keep the parking lot open, we can update this license to reflect that. And it also ties into another thing that's happening with the select board, which is the town manager and select board are working with DPW on amendments to the traffic ordinance for the town. And the current draft does include the ability for DPW to sign one side of Governor Chittenden Road as no parking. So that would mean that in the event that people do park on Governor Chittenden Road, which is also a parking road, so people can park on it if they want, we would have clear access for fire trucks and emergency vehicles and things like that. And that was it.
All looks really good to me.
Yeah,
Right.
I agree. Thanks, Simon. Do we need to, we don't need to approve that, right? That was just an update.
No, I think it's ready for the select board to discuss
Okay.
it now.
Great. All right. Champlain Valley Conservation Partnership.
I've been attending these meetings. They're generally pretty well attended by staff from South Burlington, Williston and Heinsberg, and then community members from South Burlington, Shelburne and St. George. So the South Burlington, I think, no longer have capacity to, or resources to run these meetings. So they were talking about like the future of them and how we move them forward and what the role of the group is. I found it pretty helpful for getting an in on just sort of other issues that have been taking place in our surrounding communities and just sort of an update on what's been happening. So, you know, South Burlington gave a presentation on their habitat block mapping, which they did over the last year or so, that I think Melinda and you guys might have referenced when you were doing your strategic wildlife habitat area work. So that was great background, because it sort of fed in when we picked that up again. It sort of feeds in there. You know, St. George are going through a sort of a consultation on zoning for a piece of land that they own behind the town hall and what potential uses could be made of that. I think as I understand it, the feedback has been not much development, please, for that area. Heinsberg are sort of updating their zoning regulations near the St. George line, and they're starting to look at their natural resource inventory work. So the CCRPC, so the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission, did attend, and they suggested if we, and that means the partnership, wanted to, we could submit a work order request to them to have them sort of establish it formally as a committee that they staff. But that would require funding from the various towns. And they also suggested if there was a particular project that regional partners felt was important, we could also submit a work request for that. I'm not sort of feeling that there was a particular drive on our part to do that. I don't know what people think. You know, we've got our own projects to work on, and it's useful to understand what's going on, sort of for linkages in terms of habitat and trails and things like that, with neighbouring communities. But I just wondered if people had any thoughts about, you know, where things stand with that partnership. You know, whether anyone wants to attend. They're not particularly conducive times to people who work. They're sort of 1:30 on a Wednesday, so I do appreciate it's difficult for people to attend those. Or if any people have any feelings about it in general.
Thoughts from commission members?
I think we spent a lot of time looking at maps of Williston and conservation stuff with no information about what's happening on the far side of that town boundary. So it's one of those things, like the unknown unknowns. I don't know exactly what value we would get out of continuing to have an ongoing dialogue between the towns around their conservation, I guess, challenges, but you don't know unless you're having the conversation. So I'm glad it's been useful for you in the short term, Simon, to make connections and hear what's going on in those neighboring communities. Going forward, I don't know what it would, how much the CCRPC might charge to staff it, but it does seem a shame to me not to have a regular checkpoint between the towns.
Yeah, I mean, my thought was we could probably, between us, Heinsberg and South Burlington, figure out a way of at least meeting. And
Maybe
people
it's
highlighting
quarterly.
their issue. Yeah,
You know, maybe it's
highlighting
quarterly and
their
you just
issues.
rotate who's hosting,
Yeah,
and then it's 1 to 2 per
Yeah.
year that needs staffing,
Yeah.
and it keeps the conversation going. And
yeah,
each occurrence could have at least one formal presentation, perhaps from the host town.
Yeah.
On what's going on in terms of conservation in our town.
and I think there will be some good opportunities there, because I know that both we and South Burlington are looking at our town plans in the next couple of years. So there are opportunities to be aware of what's going on in each other's towns there.
And it's not specific to conservation, but there's a conservation lens to it. There's just a lot of pushback against any development right now, regulated or not, as far as, you know, for instance, on last night's Glazer meeting, a lot of the comments are about rate and where are we going in terms of development in the town, and conservation is a piece of that. So that's the type of thing where I want to know how other towns are trying to address it. Are they having the same feedback? Because what they do in their town is going to impact here, and if there's a good way of handling different issues, we don't want to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, maybe those quarterly meetings in different towns can involve the conservation commissions, because I think it's good for the commission to kind of be, you know, maybe once a year being on those meetings.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion.
Have they been 90 minutes or an hour? Or how long have they been?
It's sort of been 90 minutes to 2 hours.
Okay.
Yeah,
I was wondering, like, could we use one of our conservation commission slots so it doesn't even represent a different time for you? Could one of our conservation commission meetings per year be a
well, I mean, but I think if that would be helpful if we want to get conservation commissioners to attend. I mean, I could talk to them about when is the best time of day to have this. You know, if it you know turns into a late afternoon meeting, I don't know if that's easy for people to attend. Sort of once a year.
I think staff is primarily important because you're dealing with issues across multiple commissions and boards, but I agree with you, Laura. I would be interested in attending, especially more so if we're committed to helping host periodically. If we're rotating, then I think it encourages attendance.
Yeah, I agree. I think so. I was going to propose something very similar to what you suggested, Reed. And I was just gonna point out that I'm, it's part of my day job. I'm a member of a similar group and type, or in concept anyway. And I've watched them over the past 10 years or so go from this initial stage of getting together to share information, and they get some people with really good energy. And then the group wants to get into doing projects and all that, and then it exceeds the capacity and the original intent of the reason to gather. So I think, it sounds like maybe this group is just kind of maybe headed that same direction, and now that it's time for a course correction on what the real purpose is, and which is, to me, for information sharing and understanding what other towns, the neighboring towns are just doing, what their issues are that they're trying to solve, and finding ways perhaps to help each other out. I like the idea of an annual meeting with the Conservation Commission members. I think that would be really interesting to at least try once anyway, to see how it would go. I don't have any thoughts on how we might pull it off or when, but it might be something worth talking about. And yeah, I agree with Reed. I think I would think that if the group the partnership can get back to just the idea of sharing information at meetings rather than trying to do projects, then that shouldn't be as much of a lift for the staff who are running the meetings. And if you can rotate responsibility for hosting, that also should share the burden as well.
Okay,
like it.
sounds good. Yep. Registration. I'll see how they feel about the 7 o'clock start.
Or 1:30, they'll say.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or how about 1:30? We'll staff it. If we don't have to
Yeah.
get up at 7, we'll staff it. All right. Anything else on that one? So how long, are they meeting monthly now?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that could be a lot, especially if they're doing minutes and all that stuff. Okay. Anything else on that one?
No, that's good. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, 2 more bullets on our staff update. We have topics for upcoming meetings, and then the Glazer parcel outcome from last night's planning commission.
Yeah, I mean, Reed mentioned it there. So the outcome, I suppose, was that there was no outcome. They continued the meeting on the basis that they wanted to take more public testimony. There was a lot of people there. I think I counted 42 on Zoom at one point, and I wasn't in the room, but I heard there was
There were about
around
40 people in the room. Yeah.
40 people in the room. So that's bigger than any DRB meeting I've been to. So there's a lot of interest. So they did vote to continue that. So they will be taking more testimony before they make a decision. And the decision, I think, is probably worth reiterating. The decision was only like whether they feel there could be a public substantial benefit or not. Not.
And if so, whether to
Yeah.
look into it themselves or create a committee.
Yeah. So that was the option. So they'll be going back to that again at the next planning commission meeting, I think. So we'll probably have another update then.
So Simon, that means they haven't created the committee yet? They haven't decided whether that's the way to go?
No, they haven't.
Yeah, if they decide there is likely a public benefit, then they will decide and are being recommended by staff to establish the committee.
Thanks.
I thought I saw on the Observer webpage this morning that somebody had voted Gary to be the chair of that committee.
That's right. He was confirmed.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot to it. I mean, when you look at, I glanced through all this stuff that's on the webpage, and wow.
Yeah, Emily put a lot of stuff together for that, including the mega FAQ that Yeah, I almost feel like the meeting should have started by reading through the mega FAQ because a lot of comments about traffic, which is not the purview of the planning commission's decision at this point. Likewise with impact fees and schools and stuff like that. So those things really were, it's not that they were bad concerns to raise, but they weren't helpful in moving toward a decision this time around. And the one
Yeah,
thing that stuck out to, oh, go ahead, Gary.
No, I was just gonna say the public comment stuff that I was reading through was also really subjective, and there's no cut dry place where yes, it is having a benefit and not. And so that's gonna be tricky to work through that, I would think. Go ahead.
The one
I'm
thing that was
sorry.
really pertinent to us was that, you know, the owner of Windswept did say that they would like to seek a route to conserve the entire parcel.
Mhm.
And they don't have a lot of resources or experience, but they want to work with anybody who's interested in doing that. And it was mentioned that any attempt to do that's going to require public, you know, fundraising effort from the public, even if it's going to be matched or assisted with some sort of grant or something like that. And I know that we've already discussed that from a Conservation Commission perspective, and Matt mentioned it last night, that the ERF is nowhere near stocked
That
to
kind-
to do something at this point. We have enough money to buy one single family home.
Yeah.
That's
probably
and that's if the
yeah.
market crashes here.
Yeah, that's a low
and-
income one. Yeah.
Exactly. I do think it brought some attention for those who did attend to the fact that, you know, we only put $50,000-ish in the ERF each year. And on years where the select board, Matt even put it this way, in years where the select board is trying not to raise taxes, we don't get anything.
Yeah.
So, you know, a lot of people, I think, in the public may not understand that, you know, we're not talking about, you know, we always have this big pool of resources. We're talking about $50,000 a year that can't buy hardly anything. And I wonder whether those folks may have taken note that, boy, that seems like a really underfunded thing if we're trying to conserve land that's really expensive. But anyway, so there's a desire from some, especially the owner of Windswept, to conserve the entire parcel. And Matt mentioned to everybody who attended that working on the specific plan does not preclude simultaneously working on other options. So, you know, the specific plan, even if it moves forward with a committee, even if it moves forward with the planning commission reviewing it, and even if it gets approved, until work begins on the project, it can be an alternative route can be explored and taken.
Okay.
Now we need,
So when
now
is,
we need a benefactor.
Yeah.
so when is the next planning commission meeting?
December the 6th, I think.
6th? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the Tuesday. First Tuesday in
Yep.
in December.
That'll be the last meeting of the year. And the funniest moment came when somebody suggested we have so many banks in town, they should pool together and buy it.
Perfect. Any bank representatives there to respond to that one?
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
They're
So it was
probably all in
adopted.
Charlotte.
Yes, it's all agreed. The banks are going to
Yeah.
buy
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
and name it, I don't know, some park.
Bank Park.
Community Bank Park. Yeah.
Yep. In terms of trails connectivity, there is multi-use path connection desires, but it's not exactly clear. There's not like a easy button to push on, like, oh yeah, right here we can just make this connection and it solves all our problems. It's even that requires some noodling about, well, is it really connecting over to Catamount, or is it connecting to Williston Central School in the village area? What are we trying to connect to? So it was interesting.
Okay. Well, thanks for that. Thanks for going to that read. All right, so the other bullet was topics for upcoming meetings.
Yeah, so I think next, in 3 weeks' time, we're doing the got a pre-app. I think I finally managed to get the Mud Pond Conservation Area Management Plan sorted for Fellowship of the Wheel, so we can review the changes to that and any
Thank you
public
for working with them.
consultation. Yeah, it's good to work with them. They're good guys, and you know, Adam's great. So I think we've had four emails of support and one against so far. So as part of that, I'll update you on any correspondence we received, and then we can go through and make sure the changes, you know, strike the right balance between letting them in and then protecting the rest of the conservation area, and then we can get it over to the select board. So that would be one thing. Also, No Mow May and Raise the Blade. Someone from Sustainable Williston wants to come in and talk to us about that and what the potential synergies are there. And then we have a pre-app. So probably the last pre-app of the year, I think, for you guys. In future meetings, there's going to be Ethan Tapper's getting close to selecting his consultant for the forest management project up at Catamount. That needs a recommendation from the Catamount Forest Committee to select board, but I think it would be useful to have hopefully your support for that for them. So maybe we'll get Ethan along sometime in early January to talk about that. And then lastly, there was the email from a resident on Giovanna Lane about the restricted firearms map. So you guys looked at this back in March. I think there was an issue with someone on a neighbouring property shooting a coyote, and there were concerns raised by a resident of Giovanna Lane about that and whether we could change the map to encompass a larger area near a Catamount. So you guys did look at this back in March, and I think we decided a number of things sort of under both the ordinance and VT state law. The change to the map wouldn't solve that problem because people do still have a right to defend their property. So I think that was one of the key sort of findings that you guys made. It was attended by the owner of the property in question, but not any neighbours. I think you also had concerns about restricting firearms use and hunting when we are experiencing an overpopulation of particular animals. Sort of the support for landowners to protect their property and their livestock, and you know, if we were going to look at it, it would probably be on a more wholesale project with a lot more outreach, and also considering areas possibly to the south of the interstate. So the resident at Giovanna Lane sort of emailed Eric Wells and myself and Melinda to ask when the select board was hearing this again. They did miss the Conservation Commission meeting. I think there was some sort of issue in that someone said that they would be notified of it. But part of the reason why we don't make those promises is because if you make that promise and then 6 months later you do have a meeting on it, it's very difficult to remember an ad hoc promise to notify someone about something. So as a result, you know, no one from Giovanna Lane turned up. But I think the bottom line is they would like to know whether the Conservation Commission would like to hear from them. on their concerns at some point, or whether they feel that this issue has been discussed for the time being. So this is not to discuss the issue, it's just to
Yep.
think about whether we want to put it back on the agenda at some future meeting.
I think for education purposes, if nothing else, I would welcome somebody coming in if they have a question about why we decided not to make a recommendation to the select board to change anything, to explain why we didn't.
Yeah, I agree. It's, I think it's important for them to know that their voices are heard, even if we are not going to revisit the issue.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I don't know that there's any. I have no idea what the hunting season is for coyotes or whatever, so I don't know if we're in it now or entering it now, or even when a change would happen if something were to, if we were to go in a different direction, but I would guess, Simon, I would suggest just work with the people from Giovanna Lane, find out when a time would work for them to come in.
Yeah.
Or log in, on an agenda that we have, at least a half hour to have a healthy discussion with them about it.
I think there's also other avenues to, if the neighbor's concern is about gun safety, gun discharge safety near adjacent property owners, then that's one thing. If their concern is about the taking of coyotes, there's other
yeah, it should be on the email.
other avenues too.
Yeah.
So I think just even if it just starts the conversation for that resident about where they, if they do want to pursue it further, where they can.
Okay, I will find out for them when they can end. And I think we'll have to make sure we invite the other interested party as well.
Yep. It does say on Vermont Fish and Wildlife website that coyotes, what did it say here? It says coyotes in Vermont, coyotes can be hunted at any time during the year. The trapping season is regulated. It begins the 4th Saturday of October and runs through December 31st.
Okay. Good to know. All right, so I guess one other topic that I just thought of as we were talking about the Berlin City Kia thing. I'm wondering if there's a bylaw we could update, or maybe write a new bylaw, propose a new bylaw around invasive species management, and requiring that for development proposals that they include an invasive species management plan for their parcel when they if their development proposal is approved.
Yeah, we can discuss that. We've got a bucket of bylaw amendments as well that we keep on the burner here, so I can have a look at that.
Okay, that'd be great. Thanks. It just seems like an opportunity to work with developers, or in Berlin City that was a minor thing, but just whatever triggered an idea in my head that maybe it's an opportunity we could take advantage of or use to do some invasive species management, at least on parcels that are proposed for redevelopment.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, how are we doing, Bruce?
Good, how are you?
All right, thanks for joining us. I think our charge here today is to put the finishing touches on this trapping policy, right?
You tell
Yep.
me. That's what I think.
I
That's
assume you're
definitely,
logging in at 8:30, and that's what our 8:30 agenda item is, so I assume that's what it is.
that's
Okay.
definitely my charge. So just, I'm not going to summarize this because I think everyone knows where we stand. But I think we got to the stage where we were generally okay with the majority of the policy. And there was just the outstanding discussion related to the need to sign. And briefly, the Conservation Commission's concern was about public safety, particularly with trapping near town trails like the Allenbrook Trail, and Public Works concern were to do with, you know, traps do get stolen, they're more likely to get stolen if we sign, and that would deter trappers, who there aren't many out there that we can work with, from taking our contracts. So I talked to Bruce a bit more about this, and it's great that he's here because I want to make sure that nothing's getting lost in translation between me and you guys and him. Maybe we can just hopefully work through it. So one of the changes, I guess the change can be summarized as taking the town right of way sort of out of this signage requirement. So we previously had the requirement about posting signs when we're doing trapping. That's sort of now been amended so that it only relates to the sort of conservation parcels and the non-right of way parcels. And then we do have this sort of explicit statement that this requirement to post signage does not apply in the town right of way. And then there was also, Bruce suggested some changes to do with sort of the management of beavers in the town right of way and how we design roads and bridges to deter them, and sort of the, you know, when we're building new roads, the document that dictates that should be the whatever the Public Works document is. So I don't know, Bruce, do you have anything to add to that? I guess you probably do. Or-
Well, no, I mean,
Yeah.
it really just comes down to the fact that, and I've said this right from the very start, right to the town manager and up, is that just don't tie Public Works hands in dealing with issues within our right of way. I get why people might want to have signage and all that. I certainly don't want anybody's animals, I've got pets myself, certainly don't want anybody's animals getting in a trap, but if we start, so let me back up a little bit. When we do have to have trapping done, which is actually not that often, it is hard to get trappers that have the license to do this out of season. In season, it doesn't matter. If there's beavers around, there's probably gonna be some trappers around anyway that are legally trapping, but we're talking about threats to the infrastructure outside of trapping season for the most part. So when at the times where we have had to do this, if people in the area know that there's a trapper around, and this is unfortunate, they'll go steal his traps. And then, that's all well and good for the trapper once or twice, but after that, they're going to bill us for traps and, start to get to the point where it's not beneficial to them to come and take care of an issue that we have to have taken care of. So just keeping it from being too difficult on them. And once again, like I said, we don't do it that often anyway. I do get calls all the time about beavers. There's a beaver in Allenbrook behind my property, blah, blah, blah. And the answer from me is it's just a beaver being a beaver. Unless they're threatening our infrastructure in some means, we're not going to do anything about them. So this is truly a not that often occurrence, but when it happens, we've got to be realistic in letting the trapper do what they do and get these out of here. And if we start have to put signs up and here's a trapping right here or whatever, that's what's gonna happen to them. They're gonna get either set off or destroyed. They're usually, this guy that we use for the most part is pretty good. The trap's only out there for a day or two. He's pretty good at what he does.
Yeah, putting it in the right place to get a quick catch.
Yeah, he's getting it done and getting out of there. I mean, he's not making any money by keep coming back and everything else. So it's not like it's a trap line that somebody has set up somewhere, which would be a different issue. More traps, more possibility of somebody, getting hurt, unfortunately. But it's far and few between. And once it's done, it's an in and out kind of thing.
So does removing the right of way from the requirement to provide signage so that if we ever needed to be doing trapping in another area, for instance, for some reason in a country park or something where there are trails, we would want a sign in those cases, but not just for what you're talking about avoiding putting traps in the right of way.
Yeah, no, I'm all for, I understand when you're talking about on town property outside of the right of way where, people are walking on trails and we all know that they don't necessarily always stay on the trails and those kind of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the dog wanders off.
Certainly it makes sense. I'm just talking about infrastructure that we maintain in our right of way. Sometimes it's not quite as clear, we might get a point where, some of our pump stations, unfortunately, are near Allen Brook. Actually, quite a few of them are pretty close to Allen Brook. And, if a beaver builds a dam and that dam starts to back up enough water that it's starting to threaten our pump station, then we might go in there and get rid of that beaver. It doesn't do any good to tear the dam down. They're a smart animal. They're just going to build it back and build it back better. So sometimes people don't even see what we're doing or why we're doing it, but it's strictly only when it comes to infrastructure. But yeah, no, Simon worked hard on this with me, and I totally agree on Mud Pond and Country Park and all those kind of places. It makes sense to let people know that there's something going on.
Okay, thanks, Bruce. So I think, generally speaking, our primary concern was liability, and risk to not just people's dogs or whatever, but also to kids who would be running around, thinking about how the Allen Brook Trail that connects the central school over to the Mountain View side of town in particular. There's a lot of kids that walk through those trails to get to school and back. For example, there's obviously other places across town where that happens too. So that's really, I think, what our major concern was risk to kids.
Sure, I get it. I get it, Eric. It's like I already said, I've got animals myself. My kids are old enough that, if they step in a trap, well, that's probably their own fault since they're adults. But I get it. And places like you're talking about, I don't see that that's a real issue. The only thing I would say is that if you put up signage and have to physically locate and let people know where those traps are, you're probably going to not be catching beavers. You're going to be getting people that are setting off the traps because they don't want beavers trapped or things like that. But.
Right. Yeah. And we weren't, I don't think we were suggesting that, we put up a sign with an arrow that says, there is a trap right below this sign, just a, alert, there is trapping it going on in this area kind of thing.
Yeah, no, that's fine. The place where, and it has nothing to do, it does, but doesn't. Lake Iroquois Recreation District, we're probably doing more trapping out there than any place else that's done in town, and it's because of one large pipe that goes underneath BB Lane, which is a private road. It's not the town of Williston's, but lots of beaver issue there, and the guy loses a lot of traps because people just perceive that they don't, it can't hurt the beaver and blah blah blah. We're not out to eradicate beavers. We're just out to protect infrastructure. So.
Okay. What do you think, Conservation Commission members? thoughts on this? We good with, that language as proposed? I gotta make it bigger. I can't read it. For the,
So this is, I think this is the language that you guys suggested at the previous meeting, that we flashed up on screen with the addition of the exclusion of the town right of way.
does anyone have any concerns with that, particularly with that, last sentence there in the blue?
Looks good to me.
I just had a quick, it looks good to me. I had a quick question for Bruce. How often do town right-of-ways fall on these lands that we have trails and such? Is there gonna be many places where that happens?
Good question. The answer is no, not really. I mean, where town right, I mean, I guess you could say theoretically where town right away goes, you know, let's just use Mud Pond and Country Park as an instance. Town owns the land on both sides, but we are still only going to be talking about the 3-rod right of way, the road itself that goes through there, not going out past that point. That's the only place I can really think of that kind of happening. I guess the you know, up on Governor Chittenden Road now, maybe on both sides of that property, but there's nowhere right there for there to be a real beaver issue. So yeah, no. So certainly we would always only be talking about the actual right of way width of the road, whatever that happens to be, or once again, you know, if it's a pump station that we have back a long gravel drive or something, and there's an issue with that. But no, I don't see that as a problem.
Thanks.
Any other questions? All right.
I'm all set.
Thanks, Reed. Simon, do we need to vote on this or are we?
I think if you're recommending it to the select board to take forward, I think that'll be helpful.
May I have a motion to approve the trapping policy as written?
So moved.
Second,
Thank you, Reed and Gary. Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Thank you. Any opposed and any abstentions? Great. All right, there we go. Done.
Thanks, Bruce. Appreciate your time.
Yeah,
Thank you,
no,
Bruce.
thank you all. I appreciate it as well. Have a good day.
You too.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, there you go, Simon. We checked off 2 things that have been hanging on your list for a long time, the annual report and the trapping policy.
Yeah, no, it's good. So the work was worth it. Wow.
Yes. All right. Anything
We
else
have
for
public
today?
safety and
Yep.
infrastructure maintenance all in
Yeah.
one policy. There you go.
Okay, anything else for today?
I don't think so. Not from me.
Okay. All right, then I'm gonna let you all go. I gotta get my dog
Thank you.
outside. Thank
Yeah.
See you
you.
outside.
Have a great
Have a good
day,
day.
everyone.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us, Reed. Bye.